Welcome to Summer Fits, where we break down the biggest moves of the NBA offseason. That's Danny Chau.
It's Justin Verrier.
Hello. We are going to break down the first big move of this year's offseason, which is, of course,
A doozy.
a doozy, one might say. The Los Angeles Lakers trade for Anthony Davis, for which they gave up pretty much every young asset they had in their
Except for Kyle Kuzma.
Except for Kyle Kuzma. If he's not an all-star, things could get dicey. So we're gonna go through the various machinations of this, but we're gonna start from the top, basically the fit between Anthony Davis and LeBron James, this new dynamic partnership. We're calling this segment Get a Fit Off.
Let's get a fit off.
Danny, what do you
Good
think
Lord.
about this kind of combination that we have here in the Lakers?
Well, just immediately, the first thing that comes to mind is I think they are instantly the most talented players each player has ever played with. Like, no shots at Dwayne Wade, but we're looking at Anthony Davis, one of the most physically gifted players we've ever seen in NBA history, partnering up with maybe the most physically gifted player in NBA history. This is just a completely different situation than what Davis has been doing in New Orleans, where he's had to kind of shoulder the load on both ends of the floor in playmaking, rebounding, scoring, literally all across the board. He's been their best player. Now at this point, you're playing with a guy like LeBron. Life is gonna get so much easier for them.
Yeah, Davis has pretty much been cycling through a bunch of different point guard options throughout his career. They traded for Drew Holiday to kind of be his pick and roll partner. Didn't really work out as expected. Drew Holiday still probably his best teammate throughout his career, but he moved off the ball. So you have guys like Tim Frazier. They tried Tyreek Evans, baby LeBron, a long time ago is what they used to call him. But now you have LeBron, the actual LeBron, who is pretty good even at age 34, going to be 35 in December.
Right, and we talk about, the pick and roll and how it is essentially the most fundamental play that you can make in basketball, especially in modern NBA, creating mismatches and getting people in space. LeBron's pick and roll abilities has changed in recent years, specifically with regards to how willing he is to pull up from very, very deep range. He's basically taken on the whole Steph Curry mentality, and that's completely changed how the Lakers have operated and how LeBron has typically operated across his career.
Or he's just lazy.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. He's 34.
He has settled for a lot of
Right.
jumpers
Absolutely.
over the past year or two.
But if you look at his pick and roll usage as a ball handler specifically, he's averaged 7.5 possessions per game last year in the regular season, which is up 2 possessions from his last year in the Cavs previously. It accounts for about 28% of his possessions on the Lakers. So we're looking at AD, who has typically not really been that prolific of a pick and roll threat, just because he hasn't really had many options to play off of. And he wasn't really as efficient as a roll man as you would expect of a guy who is as big as he is and as talented as he is. But this is just a completely different look. We could be looking at really high pick and rolls with LeBron and AD, and suddenly you have 2 different levels of just elite playmaking in one play, and that's terrifying no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, you have the most fundamental play in basketball operated by perhaps the 2 players you want to be on both sides of it. Literally the ideals on both sides of it, in part because they're so good at the basics, but on the other hand, they're just super versatile.
Yeah.
Anthony Davis started as more of a traditional big man. It was a lot of just this giant athletic body just doing things better based on activity.
Right.
And then over time, as Alvin Gentry got in there and kind of allowed him to expand his game, he became almost this giant wing type. So he's great on the move. He can do a little bit with the ball. If LeBron wants to run in transition, which again, he hasn't been willing to do over the past couple of years, AD's the perfect 5 to run with them. I still think they probably want to get a center in there in order to allow AD to not play 4 or 5 all the time. But if that's going to be their primary lineup for a lot of minutes, and specifically the one that they're going to close with, that's tough to combat against regardless of who else is on the floor.
Right, and when we're talking about defensively, LeBron has obviously taken many steps back, or leaps, bounds, and just like, yeah. But when you look at that makeup, you're basically looking at 2 guys who are some of the most skilled players in the NBA who can both play the 5 in spot minutes. And when you're looking at building a playoff contender, that's really what you want. You want having options at the 5 because it allows you to put in as much perimeter talent as possible down the lineup. And when you have LeBron at the 5, you're basically just saying everyone needs to space the floor.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm looking forward to seeing with AD is that, he's improved his three-point shot year after year, but it's still not to the level of, he could probably get to 34, 35% shooting the 3, maybe 3 attempts per game. And that would open up so many opportunities for both him, LeBron, and the rest of his teammates. Because last year, probably the best strategy against AD with the Pelicans was kind of just letting him take those shots.
Yeah, I'm curious how AD will develop as more of a catch and shoot shooter. If they do go with maybe like a budget rim runner at that center position for a few minutes, maybe AD kind of develops as just like a spot up shooter, which is crazy to think because he's never really been that, but he's usually kind of pulled up and dribbled into the threes that he's taken. But that's like on the table as a possibility, and that just kind of brings about like all the different pieces you could put around these guys in order to kind of make the most of this team. But it is going to be difficult because as you mentioned, it would be great if they got a bunch of wing players in there, but those guys usually come at a premium.
Absolutely.
And they're tough to find on this market, which is a good transition to talking about what the Lakers have available in terms of resources going into the rest of this summer. We call this Open Up the Books. We're going to take a look at the draft picks and the cap space and everything they have available post this AD trade. They have literally 3 other guaranteed players on the roster.
This is really easy. Right now, no draft picks and 3 other players. There's Kyle Kuzma, Mo Wagner, and Isaac Bonga, all of which have come from the past 2 drafts.
It's great. It's great stuff. On the other end of this, the timing of when this trade is officially executed has a world of repercussions going forward here. There's this weird thing happening where the deal can either go to the league office on July 6th, which is the earliest opportunity after the free agency moratorium, or July 30th, which is the 30-day moratorium you would need in order to trade a draft pick who has already been drafted. The difference is huge. If it's on July 30th, they have basically a max slot for a 7 to 9 year veteran. Those are your Kyries, your Jimmys, those type of guys. If it happens on July 6th, though, they have $23.7 million. That is not enough to get a max player, and it did seem like, based on reports coming right after this trade, that the Lakers had eyes toward a Kemba Walker, some of these max players.
Right.
They couldn't get that. Kemba's already looking at a supermax in Charlotte, and he's probably not going to take significantly less on less than a max he can get from another team.
Right. Yeah. So $23.7 million is not enough for Kemba Walker.
It's even tough to find a few guys, like maybe split it in between 2 guys, because as we'll see, the market is really top heavy right now, and there isn't much kind of in that, I don't know, 3rd to 4th to 2nd level sorts of guys. They also have their room exception at $4.5 million, but again, they stretched Luol Deng's contract last year for some reason. I don't understand why they did this. I guess it was
as like a courtesy, like he was just like.
I guess maybe it was, I don't know, but they have $5 million in dead money on their books right now, and that's exactly what they need to ensure themselves that they have a max deal, and they just don't have that. So they really have kind of 2 paths here, and it's really dependent on what happens with like accounting, basically.
Right.
So you have the max player route, and you have the couple of guys. Right?
This is exactly why Magic stepped out. Like, why would he ever want to think about numbers?
Well, clearly Rob Pelinka isn't either. This is insane.
Who is in charge of your accounting, Lakers? I would like to know.
Danny would like to know. Hit him up.
I don't know. I don't want the job. I'm terrible with numbers. I just want to know. But yeah, like I feel like with the Lakers, there's obviously always going to be a big 3 ambition.
Yeah.
And obviously after they made the trade, there was a lot of kind of scuttlebutt on Instagram and social media about, they might be in the mix with Kawhi again, which is like.
Were people saying that on the gram?
Kawhi's family was.
Oh, was he really? I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
So there was a little bit of that, and obviously, if you can get Kawhi, you're gonna try and get Kawhi.
Sure.
You pairing Kawhi with LeBron and AD would be three of the most versatile players we've ever seen.
How crazy would it be if Kawhi wants to go there, but they can't do it? That's on the table.
Right.
I think there are ways where they could probably, if they wanted to just like get the Pelicans to help them, they could probably give them Mo Wagner or some of these other guys, and maybe that's enough for the Pelicans to just be like, sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know why they would help them any more than they already have.
Right. Yeah, and so let's say Kawhi is probably the longest of shots.
Yes.
And with two, lead forwards, the most obvious addition would probably be a point guard.
Sure.
You're looking for a perimeter-oriented guy who can kind of play pick and roll with both of these guys and, be a standard playmaker for the second unit.
Right.
So what are we looking at here?
So, Kyrie Irving is the first one that comes to mind.
Sure.
He already made it work next to LeBron, and AD is light years better than Kevin Love ever was, especially on the defensive end. And then Kemba Walker, I think, is interesting. Although the more I think about it, I think the defensive concerns that he presents probably doesn't make him an ideal fit, especially because they need defense, they need shooting, and they need some creation. Because even though LeBron is probably going to be the primary creator on this team, he needs time to just hand it off to someone and let them go to work, as we've seen over the couple years. And this is why Kyrie was such a good fit. He likes to just dump it off to someone, and then that person will go off and run things for a little while.
I just feel like with this Lakers team, you're pairing two of the top 10 players, maybe the top 7 players already. You have them locked in into your team. That should be enough. You don't need to be spending a premium on a third guy when it means your depth is absolutely decimated. We've seen what happens to the Warriors, when they had to go and acquire all of these stars, and it's like, okay, so who's rounding out their bench? They're going with guys who can't shoot, who aren't very complimentary of their star power, but they didn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
And so I'm starting to think, okay, you have AD, you have LeBron. Is it time to start looking at guys like Malcolm Brogdon, a restricted free agent who, you might be able to steal from the Bucks if you offer enough money?
You know who'd be really good on the restricted free agent market? D'Angelo Russell. Imagine that. He and LeBron seem to get along.
Son.
Yeah, they got along when he was in LA for his returning, and he dropped a bunch of points on them. I think he knocked them out of the playoffs, actually, officially, which is quite appropriate. I don't know. I think those type of guys are what they need, though.
Right, because Malcolm Brogdon, not a standard point guard, but you're looking at a guy who's 6'5", built like a tank, smart, plays defense, can hit his threes. Isn't that all you really need from a LeBron-led team? An Anthony Davis-led team?
Yeah, Giannis and AD are comparable in a lot of ways. I think we talk about Giannis as the potential MVP and Defensive Player of the Year candidate. We were saying all those things about AD a year ago. And to be honest, we expected him to be in those conversations when we started the season. Things went off the rails from there. I guess the problem with restricted free agency is twofold. One, you have to...
You're committing.
Yes, you're committing for 2 days. And while these things kind of already are in motion,
right.
you're at the behest of the matching team. They could pull this out for 2 days and force you to wait, and it just completely screws up your entire summer. The other problem is a restricted free agency max for these guys, for Russell, starts at $27.3 million. They might not have enough for that.
Right.
So, as I go through some of the other options, though, if they do have a max available, I'm starting to come around on Jimmy Butler just because of the defensive concerns. I think they're going to need a perimeter stopper. And Jimmy, although he's aging, does that really matter when you're kind of beholden to LeBron's window, and thus you're really just worried about these 2 years? Just give him the 4 years and deal with that later?
With Jimmy, it's not necessarily his talent or his defensive capabilities. I'm just worried about fit. I don't know if he's a good enough shooter to space the floor for them. And you put him and LeBron and AD together, and suddenly Lebron's the best shooter of the three, and you're having him spot up. That's kind of a weird look.
It's a bad look. How do you feel about Chris Middleton? That's the other Bucks option.
Love Middleton. Yeah. Middleton hype over here.
If it was up to Danny, you would just sign every Bucks player. in order to fill out. I mean, Brook Lopez would be good for this team too.
Look, I mean, the Bucks had the best record in the NBA by following a very specific template that was probably cribbed from all of the ass beatings that LeBron gave the Eastern Conference.
Yes.
You know? And so, like, yeah, porting that over to the West makes a lot of sense to me.
It does. But as we described, they might not have the money. So I went deep in the weeds last night in order to try to find out what type of guys that they might have available.
Lakers fans, buckle up. This is incredible.
Okay, so if they have $23.7 million, I came up with Terrence Ross and Patrick Beverley. And here's the thing. I think both of them fit really well.
Yeah.
Terrence Ross, three-point shooting last year, 38.6% on catch and shoots, 38.4% on pull-ups, 41.4% when open, which is 4 to 6 feet, I guess.
Yeah, when there's no defender within 4 to 6 feet of you. He had a great season with the Magic last year.
Those are really what you want in someone from, like, to play off of LeBron, right? And Patrick Beverley, another guy, 41, 38.5, 30 on open threes, not good. But he was actually better on wide open threes, so who's to say?
Sure, but I mean, when you're going for Patrick Beverley, you're signing him with an expectation from him. He's going to be a locker room guy. He's going to be, a solid defender, a solid three-point shooter. He's just going to offer you everything you need. So he's one of those guys. He's a role player who, in theory, makes so much sense for a team like this.
The problem is, that might be too ambitious. Because as I was doing this, Eric Pincus of Bleacher Report reported on Twitter that he was hearing Patrick Beverley was going to go for $10 million, perhaps even more. So
what are the Mavs going to do with their money? You know,
there's so many teams with so much money that I think Terrence Ross is like a $15 million player, perhaps even more.
Right.
So this might not work. You might be just looking at Patrick Beverley and like an Austin Rivers, who I've slotted them in for like kind of the room exception.
Well, the thing is, Austin Rivers had such a good playoffs. He might not be available for the room exception.
He might be going for $7 million. I will say, when I looked into it, because the market is so top heavy, and there are a lot of guys who probably fall in the range where they might be ring chasing, and they might be more willing to take the minimum to go play with LeBron and AD. There are a few options. Reggie Bullock, who is already on the Lakers after that midseason trade, they have his cap hold, and I think if they operate above the cap, they could actually pay him more. So that's one way they could bring him back. A few guys I found on the minimum market, potentially DeAndre Jordan.
Oh, absolutely.
I think he's at that stage of his career. I actually think, if anything, he might not be worth a starting spot, so that could be an issue because he really dogged it all of last year. Derrick Rose, not my favorite human, but definitely a guy on a minimum who could do some things for you. Nerlens Noel, team clutch. Elfrid Payton, I think, is a good guy. I've been an Elfrid Payton fan for a little while now. I'm just basically giving them all of the Magic's crappy players from 2 years ago. But I think he's a point guard who has some upside still, can't shoot, but he can run an offense for 15 minutes a game.
Sure.
Ian Clark.
Like, would you rather Elfrid Payton or Alex Caruso though?
I don't know. Probably Payton.
Caruso was fine at the end of the year.
I feel like
he can shoot threes.
LeBron is less
He's
likely
big.
to punk Elfrid Payton. I don't know.
He was completely laudatory at the end of the year. He knew exactly who Alex Caruso was.
Sure. It doesn't help that, he's just like a balding guy with a mustache, let's be honest. Ian Clark, another guy, Jamal Crawford, Jared Dudley. Those are the names I came up with. Those are fine.
Sure. Like if you're just literally trying to round out your team, but like, man, you need capable shooters in that lineup, because we're looking at a starting lineup of AD. I mean, would you start Kuzma?
You have to.
You have to start Kuzma.
They don't have any other players.
So like Kuzma at the 5 nominally.
Yes. Who I don't like.
Sure.
I'm not a big Kuzma fan, and if you need defenders and shooters around LeBron, Kuzma didn't do either of those last year. Like, maybe he has more shooting potential. He shot better as a rookie than he did in his second year, but he was pretty bad as a three-point shooter last year.
He has a reputation as a shot maker. It hasn't quite lived up to that hype. He definitely has big scoring nights, and that can kind of change the perception of a player very, very easily. But
sure.
He's definitely not quite where a lot of Lakers fans seem to think he is.
No, believe it or not.
So like, okay, so when we're thinking about it, one thing that it keeps coming up for me is just like, if you're asking Kemba to be a third option, Would you rather have him than Seth Curry?
Well, here's the thing. I think on the market, the things you need to find are creators and wings, but there aren't a lot of either of those things.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna get one of them, why not just get the best of that? And if you're already down to a Terrence Ross and Patrick Beverley, why not just fill one of those spots with an elite player rather than two okay players? I'm saying it, and I don't even know if I believe myself.
It's just, if they're filling out this roster with a bunch of minimum guys who are either ring chasing at the very end of their careers or unproven guys who might not fit their system because they can't shoot. I mean, the Lakers are basically asking everything of LeBron and AD to work out.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at that right now, Danny, with your Magic play breakdown.
Yeah, so here's what it could look like if it all goes right. I've been looking at a few plays, and
Grinding tape.
yeah, let's see. So here is a play that starts with the Lakers on defense, and Gary Harris comes in, gets on the cut, gets blocked by Kuzma, which initiates a break. LeBron has become, such a threat to pull up that defenses kind of have to account for him pulling up from anywhere, and that kind of freezes the defense. Jokic has to jump twice just to make sure LeBron isn't doing anything, and as a result of that, it gives LeBron more time and a bigger window to take advantage of the defense. And in this play, you'll notice JaVale McGee just kind of running down aimlessly. Now imagine if JaVale McGee's Anthony Davis. And the amount of attention that goes to LeBron. They have 5 different players. Every single player is aware of LeBron's proximity on the court. Now if you have AD and LeBron sucking in all of the defensive attention, those corners will be open every single time. And so that's kind of what this Lakers team is going to look like. And that's precisely why they need to make the right decision with the rest of their roster. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to seeing from Anthony Davis is his ability on the short roll. And so he didn't really do a lot of this. This is a play that they ran with Drew Holiday. And Anthony Davis just sucks in so much attention down in the paint. I mean, the Mavs basically have, in this play, 3 guys down in the paint trying to wall him off. When you do that, again, the corners. Yeah. It's basic basketball, fundamental modern basketball. You suck in the defense and you kick it out. Anthony Davis has the abilities of a Draymond, of a Ben Simmons. He can make those plays off the short roll, and he hasn't had that many opportunities to do so in the Pelicans, as we've said in the past, but this could be a very, very huge weapon for the Lakers.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Anthony Davis. He's still 26. He's probably, if not the best talent in the entire league, among the top 3, and he's still improving. Last year, before everything kind of fell apart, he was getting much better as a passer, which is the next leap he needs to take into his game. He's been able to do things on the move, shoot on the move, but now it seems like he's aware of what's going on the court better than ever, and he's able to hit guys like that. I think that's a perfect example of what you can get out of someone like him.
Yeah, and I think for all the talk of the Lakers giving up so much to get him, you're getting a top 3, top 5 player in the prime of his career, still getting better. I think it's a no-brainer.
Really? All right, and that's a good place to kind of come to a conclusion here. Let's do a little thumbs up, thumbs down on the entire trade.
Thumbs up.
Your thumbs up.
I'm thumbs up. I am so bad at looking into the future that all I can see is what's right in front of me, and what's right in front of me are 2 of the best players of all time.
They're pretty good. On the other hand, it doesn't seem like the Lakers have much of a future.
Sure.
In addition to literally their entire draft coffers, they don't have much money, so I'm not sure who they could put around them. And then in 2 years, is LeBron staying at that point? Is he still playing basketball? And if he is that still going to be Anthony Davis's best teammate? That's really, they're putting themselves into a very concise window, and it's worked for teams like the Raptors and some of these other ones, but they had more than 2 good players. And so I'm significantly worried. I'm going to go with thumbs down. I'm a Lakers hater. That's me. That's my brand. All right, we'll wrap it up right there. For Danny, I'm Justin. We'll be back throughout the offseason, talk about all sorts of trades and free agency and all the other things that happen in a chaotic NBA offseason. So until then, we will catch you next time. Hey, thanks for watching this Ringer.com YouTube exclusive. If you like what you saw, click the like button or subscribe, or just do whatever you want. It's a free country.